It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm going to need your help. I'm going to try to compress 40 years of experiences and knowledge in about 90 minutes, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I've had the privilege and honor of meeting some incredible individuals during the course of my life, and they've shared stories with me that some of these have not been published. Some of them are really extraordinary, and there is a difference between contactees and abductees. Abductees are taken against their will. Contactees are given free choice to interact with the visitors, and the visitors ask these individuals if they would want to interact with them. So that's the difference. And the people I'm going to be talking about have had direct experience with these individuals. My first slide is, what do you know? All of us have some knowledge of things. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the knowledge that I have. I happen to know this gentleman, Colonel Donald Ware. You may have heard of him. He was a former Air Force colonel. He was a test pilot. He's had experiences with the visitors. And after I had gotten a chance to meet William Tompkins as a result of Major George Filer introduced me to Bill Tompkins, and I was able to help bring him to Jeff Rentz's program to share the experiences of his life. Colonel Don Ware sent me something through the mail, and he said, Frank, he said, I want you to share this with Bill Tompkins. He said, I want you to share this with Dr. Robert Wood, and he said, I want you to share this with Dr. Michael Salla. And what he shared with me was the Rockwell Integrated Space Chart. I don't know if you folks have ever seen this before. I have to apologize to you that the rendition is not as clear as I'd like it to be, but I'll give you my email address, and if you'd like a copy of it, I'll be happy to email it to you so you can take a look at it. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's a layout of us getting involved in the space exploration, and it's outlined to go up to the year 2100, okay? Not only visiting the moon, but visiting all the planets in our solar system and visiting star systems, okay? Now, he sent this to me and it blew me away. I never knew anything like this existed. So I contacted Bill Tompkins, I contacted Robert Wood, and when Bill Tompkins heard about this, he said, Frank, he said, are they making this available? And I said, yes, Colonel Ware wanted you folks to have it. He said, we must be so close to disclosure right now because everything on this has been worked on for decades. When Bob Wood saw this, Bob Wood saw this, he said, Frank, everything on this chart has been accomplished decades ago. I said to Colonel Don Ware, I said, I always thought the difference between the black world of technology and the white world of what the public knew is 75 to 100 years. He said, Frank, no, it's 1,000 years. They're 1,000 years in advance of what the public knows. And I asked this to Bill Tompkins. I said, Bill, is it true that we could be that far in advance? He said, yes. He said, we're 1,000 years in advance of what the public knows. Now, these are 10 stars that the distance was planned to go to visit, and we are actually out there. Bill Tompkins, if you don't know anything about him, he worked as part of the secret space program for Solar Warden to develop craft to go out into the cosmos, okay? He's an incredible individual. He wrote a book. This is an image of him. It's
Yeah, there is no volume.
There's no volume? Just talk right into it?
Right next to it.
Okay, all right. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Bill Tompkins is an incredible individual. He wrote a book called Selected by Extraterrestrials. I don't know if you ever heard of it. He talks about his experiences of having been brought to this planet, and he's one of 500 different individuals that were brought to this planet with extraordinary abilities to help in cultivating things behind the scenes, okay? He was an eyewitness to the Battle of Los Angeles as a young boy at the age of 14. The craft that was over Los Angeles in 1942, that was parked over Los Angeles for several hours, and ships and artillery batteries fired upon it. They fired every artillery shell, every shell that was on board the boats at Long Beach Harbor, and there were dozens and dozens of smaller craft that came out of the large craft. He said the large craft was 1 mile in diameter. And he said 2 of the craft were knocked down that came out of this large mothership. One went in the San Gabriel Mountains, and one of them went into the sea. The one that went into the San Gabriel Mountains was recovered by the Army. The one that went into the sea was recovered by the Navy. What I didn't know about that chart, was that Bill Tompkins told me the genesis of this chart, he started when he was at Douglas Aircraft in 1952. The genesis of this went back to 1952. His original chart and his plan for this was to be laid out in a horizontal format, not a vertical format. The horizontal format was much easier for the mind to comprehend and understand what is printed here, what is disclosed here. You can't go from one aspect of space exploration to the next without following every one of those steps. It's tens of thousands of man-hours in this. Bill Tompkins' original chart, which is now with Dr. Bob Wood. Dr. Bob Wood was a member of the Douglas secret think tank for 42 years. Bill Tompkins was a member of the secret think tank that was more secretive than what Bob Wood knew when he worked on this. His original chart is 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. It's unbelievable. Several years ago, he had shown it to Bob Wood, Michael Salla, and Corey Good. When Corey Good saw that, he jumped back. He said, I never thought I'd ever see anything like this. He said, everything that Tompkins worked on opened the door for what work that Corey Good was involved in as being an emissary for our planet with other civilizations. Okay, it's unbelievable when Bill got the copy of the Rockwell chart. He had Bob Wood send to me a 300-page document from Douglas that he was part of that described 25 different advanced propulsion systems for getting out into the stars. Okay, it was his personal copy. It had his name on it, William Tompkins, and it had his notes. It was 300 pages. It talked about anti-gravity. It talked about ionic propulsion. It talked about other faster-than-light speeds. Okay. When Bill was a young boy, there are pictures of Dr. Bob Wood and Dr. Michael Salla. So they had copies of that chart that had been given to me by Colonel Ware. When he was a young boy, he has a photographic mind, a photographic memory. His father took him into Long Beach Harbor, and he saw boats in Long Beach Harbor, and he made models of them. And he gave 3 of the models to a local hobby shop, okay? And the hobby shop was in Long Beach, California. And some Navy personnel happened to go by the hobby shop, and they wanted to know who made those models because they were so exact, and they showed things in those models that nobody had ever seen before. So the hobby shop owner said, William Tompkins made them, and he lives in Long Beach. So the 2 Navy personnel went to Long Beach, and they talked to the father, and he said, it wasn't me, it was my son. They approached the son. They said to the father, we would like to bring him into the Navy. He was brought into the Navy at the age of 15, okay? He has this gifted ability to be able to tune into things and to be able to see things at a higher level than any of us could ever see, okay? And he'd only have to see something once, and he could commit it to memory and create it. At the age of 15, he was brought into the Navy. His father made the Navy agree that he would never see combat, so he never saw combat. He was part of a team where they worked with a Navy admiral and 2 captains that were basically taking information from 33 Germans that were in the German Army and taking information regarding advanced technology that the Germans had.
Frank, you're going to put your chin right to the mic. They can't hear you.
My God, okay. All right.
There's nobody here for maintenance.
Okay. All right, not a problem. Anyway, he was brought into this program, and he worked in San Diego. This is one of the photographs of him with some of the women that he worked with, and you could see the badge that he has here, showing his classified designation. Okay, Dr. Michael Salla is working with. There were supposed to be 6 books. Selected by Extraterrestrials was going to be 6 volumes of Bill Tompkins' career. Okay, the first one was released. The second one is in the process of being completed now. Dr. Michael Salla has appealed to the under the Freedom of Information Act, information about Bill Tompkins' background, and he got photographs of Bill Tompkins working at these secret think tanks that Bill Tompkins never thought would be released. They're going to be in the upcoming book that they're working on right now. Bill said, they have photographs that I never thought I'd ever see again that were taken 40, 50, 55 years ago. This is a document that Michael Salla was able to get that shows his confidential background in debriefing and supplying information that they were getting from these German operatives that were put into packets of information, and Bill Tompkins was given the responsibility of taking the Admiral's plane and flying to MIT, to Caltech, to Stanford, to Princeton, to share the packets of information for back engineering for technology, okay? And he completed those missions all during the war years. This is where he worked out of. This is North Island, San Diego, okay? This was taken in the late 30s. Boy, if that doesn't look like something out of a science fiction movie today, but that's in the late 30s. That's where they debriefed the 33 German operatives that were rotated in on a singular basis, one at a time, and they would share information with him. Bill Tompkins would tune into their experiences and create drawings and designs based upon what they were saying, and those design packets were taken to these universities for back engineering craft, okay? This is a picture taken of him that was in a newspaper, talks about a Douglas engineer and his hobby, okay? He continued to make models of ships and craft and things like that, but his real love was working and designing craft that went out into the stars. He worked on Solar Warden craft, okay? This is a photograph of him as a draftsman at Douglas at the secret think tank that he worked in. This is a picture of Maria Orsic. She was part of the Vril Society in Germany, and it said that she had the ability of being able to tune in and to be able to open up portals. And Bill Tompkins said that every secret think tank that he worked at, he said there were 2 females that worked at those think tanks and 1 male that were not from here. He said the 2 women were Nordic women that looked like us. They would pass as earthlings. They were just wearing earth clothes. And he said the one that he worked with at Douglas looked very, very similar to Maria Orsic. He said it was not Maria Orsic, but he said she looked similar to it, okay? And he said they would help him. I said, Bill, how would they help you? He said they would give me a project to work on, and he said I would get a flash of light in my mind, and he said I'd be able to see what needed to be designed, what needed to be built. This is a poor rendition of one of the designs of a battle cruiser that he designed, okay? Here's another one. These craft were 17 kilometers long. 17 kilometers long, that's 10 and a half miles, okay? He said they built these items, and he said they used the propulsion systems that had been developed, and they could fly faster than the speed of light. And I said to him, I said, Bill, I said, these craft, and he said they worked on 7 different groups of craft, okay? Look at the size of this, 2.5 miles. Unbelievable sizes. These are renditions of things that Bill had designed that's actually out there, okay? I said, Bill, how would you see these things? Would they be like in a holographic display? He said, no, more intense than that. I said, in what way? He said, I'd be able to see things at the integrated circuit level. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no. He said, it would be crystal clear to me. And he would design these craft. And he said, we had the ability of being able to go from the Earth to the middle of our galaxy in 45 minutes. In 45 minutes. He said the next 3 battle groups that they were working on, or next 3 Solar Warden groups, were going to be using a faster propulsion than that. And he said, what do you think that would be? And I said, there's only one thing faster than light. And I said, it's thought. And he said, that's right. He said, they're using thought propulsion. He said, now there's scientists working today. I'll mention a name to you. One is named Jack Sarfati. He's a graduate of Cornell University. He's a physicist. And he's part of a nucleus of scientists that are going to be part of Disclosure. And it has been said that he has been shown the memory metal that was found at Roswell. Memory metal is a piece of metal that looks like aluminum foil. You could crunch up in your hand, and it gets compressed just like aluminum foil. You open up your hand, and it straightens itself out again. It's said that he's been shown this. He's come up with a series of equations now, physics equations, utilizing metallurgy with awareness and consciousness. He said, this is what the star visitors are using. They're using awareness, consciousness with metallurgy to be able to use thought propulsion to get from one place to another. He said, we're not at that point yet. He said, we could back engineer this stuff, but we can't layer atoms the way they do. They're layering atoms in a way that we can't. So Bill Tompkins designed these craft, okay, 7 groups of craft, and he worked on these up until the time he passed, which was about a year ago in August. He passed. He left us. But he left a lot of information that's still going to be revealed and released. I mentioned before about Dr. Bob Wood. He's also a physicist from a graduate of Cornell. And he's aware of a lot of the black arts and black things that are known that are going to be made available. Some of it's going to be released in upcoming books about Bill's background and his experience. These are just incredible craft. This is one of the last ones that he worked on, okay? Both this part and this part could come off and go off into the galaxy and then come back again and return. I know some of this stuff is really amazing for you to even think about, that we have this kind of capability, but apparently we do. I showed this to him. This is a comparison of the USS Hillenkoetter. Hillenkoetter was the first director of the CIA. This is one of the first Solar Warden craft that was named after a CIA director. Look at it in comparison to a plane and to an aircraft carrier. When I showed this to Bill, he told me intimate details of what's inside of this. It's unbelievable. It's like he was inside of it and he could tell me everything that's inside of this craft. You might want to wonder, where are these things being built? And I said to Bill, where are these things being built? He says, they're being built in Utah at the base of the Wasatch Mountains. He said, they've constructed an underground facility, and he said, there's doors that open up. Each door is 20 city blocks long, okay? Both doors open up into an underground facility, and he said, it is so precise that when the doors open up, the plant life, the cactus, everything above ground does not get disturbed. And then the craft goes in and comes out, and everything closes up again. He said there's 30,000 people working at this facility. Okay, 30,000 people from Boeing, from Grumman, from Rockwell, from all the major aircraft companies. Have any of you seen the new Grumman aircraft commercial? It shows a hangar that's fully lit, and there's no sound, there's no narration, there's no music, and there's something in the middle of the hangar, and it's got a tarp over it, and it's on a tripod. And the camera goes slowly around it. It's a fully lit hangar. The camera goes slowly around it. There's a tarp over what's in the middle. At the end of the commercial, a scroll comes across, and it said, wait to see what's next. The shape of what it looks like underneath that tarp is a flying saucer. So they're showing that commercial now. They're showing that commercial. So, and they say at the end of it, wait to see what's next. Anyway, at the base of this Wasatch Mountains in Utah are where the craft are made. Bill told me, he said that the first porthole that they found was in Northern Virginia. He said the government found a porthole that they could go out into space. And he said after that, he said the Navy went around and they found portholes all over the world. About 3 months ago, I was watching an episode of Ancient Aliens, and they were talking about portholes, and they showed a map of portholes all around the planet. And I said to myself, my God, that's the chart that Bill was telling me about that the Navy had created. They're showing the chart of the portholes all around the country. And the first chart was the one that they found in Northern Virginia. I want to digress a bit. Colonel Ware told me, he said, Frank, he said, there's meetings that they have from the Pentagon on the moon. And he said, they go to the moon in 5 minutes. He said, they leave the Pentagon. He said, they travel west. And he said, they go through a portal. And he said, then they're at the moon. They go there for lunch. They have meetings on the moon. And he said, they come back again in 5 minutes. And he said, it goes on a regular basis. I know it sounds like science fiction, but these people are not making this stuff up. What's the tie-in with the world that we know, okay? Everybody may have heard of Ben Rich. He was the director of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. He made these incredible announcements before he passed away, okay? We already have the means to travel among the stars, but those technologies are locked up in black projects and would take an act of God ever to get them to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. That's from Ben Rich, okay, the director of Lockheed Martin. We now have technology to take ET home. No, it won't take someone else's lifetime to do it. There's an error in the equations. We know what it is. We now have the capability to travel to the stars. There are two types of UFOs, the ones we build and the ones they build. What are the equations he's talking about? I asked Bob Wood about that. He said, Frank, they found an error in Maxwell's equations. There was a book that was published in 1995. It's called Modified Maxwell Equations in Quantum Electrodynamics by Harmuth and Barrett, okay? In 1985, it was found that Maxwell's equations generally do not have solutions that satisfy the causality law. This book shows that the correction of Maxwell's equations eliminates the infinite zero-point energy in quantum electrodynamics. In addition, it presents many more new results. Maxwell's original equations form the foundation of classical electromagnetism, classical optics, and electric circuits. These are his four equations, and these are the equations that they found there was a fault in, and they corrected them. And when they corrected them, it opened a doorway to the stars, and that's what they've been using, okay? Bill Tompkins continued to contribute information up until the time that he passed. He told me that he was a member of the Navy League. The Navy League has two aspects, an outer league that works with Navy families and an inner aspect that works with extraterrestrials. He told me that when he was in Medford, Oregon, he was working with the Union League there. He said there was a facility that Navy personnel, they had their children attend this farm, and this farm was maybe about 10 miles from Medford. And he said the children were taken to this farm, and these are all children of Navy personnel. They were going to be future members of Solar Warden. He said they would be taken to this farm, and he said there would be space beings there, male and female, wearing one-piece suits, and they would project holographic images of what these children would need to know to become part of Solar Warden. And he said he saw the farm where the children were taught this. And he said it goes on up until this day. He told me that he was invited from the year 2000. The Navy has a program in San Diego. It's called San Diego 2000. Then it's 2001, 2002. It's only for Navy personnel, high-ranking Navy personnel, NATO members, and scientists, okay? It's held every year for 3 days. He was invited to every one of these events up until 2017, which was the year he passed. He told me that the purpose of these meetings is to discuss advanced technology, advanced designs, and interacting with the visitors. And I said to him, Bill, when he went to the one in 2017, I said, Bill, did you get any grief at all from any of the commanders or admirals who were there? He said, I didn't hear one negative word. He said 1- and 2-star admirals would come up to me and compliment me because he was on Jeff Rense. He had done dozens of interviews on Jeff Rense. He said one 4-star admiral came over to him and put his arm around him and wanted to have a picture with him. He said they said nothing negative to him at all. I said, Bill, did the Navy give you any negative objection to anything whatsoever? He said only one thing. They told him do not use the internet. So when I would correspond with him, it would be by telephone or by mail, or I would send to one of his friends a jump drive with information and share it with him. And I said, Bill, if they're telling you do not use the internet, don't use the internet. So we would correspond using snail mail, so to speak. But he participated in every one of these events for 17 years, and he said the access to these events is color-coded. He wouldn't tell me the color that he had for his color code, but he said it's the second highest that's available. And he said all of space exploration is Navy-oriented. He said the Air Force has always been the straw man in this for UFOs. He said the Navy's been behind us for forever. Any questions about this? It's a remarkable man. Yes?
Yes, you may have said it, but how far back has it gone
I would say in the mid-50s. A researcher that I knew when I lived in California. I had the honor and privilege of living in California twice and meeting some extraordinary people. I met a researcher by the name of Bill Hamilton, and he told me that in 1960 they had a base on Mars, that they were bringing engineers from Earth up there. They were taking only single men. They were not taking families. They were there for at least 6 months to a year, and he said then they would come back to Earth again. I asked Bill Tompkins that. He said yes. He said we had a mission, and he said we had a facility on Mars as early as 1960. My uncle, who was in the Air Force for 30 years, he designed closed-circuit monitoring systems for missile silos all over the world. He's always known my interest in UFOs. All he would say to me is the government knows about them, and he said they're here, and he said you really don't have to worry about it. But he told me, he said that, I once asked him, his name is John, I said, John, is there 50 levels above top secret? He says, I'm aware of 35 levels above top secret. He said he had been cleared to some of the highest security clearances, and he told me that he didn't fly, but he saw the SR-71 fly in 1957 as a prototype. In 1957, he saw the SR-71 fly. So we've had the capability of going to the stars for a long period of time, Another thing Bill Tompkins told me is that when there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he said they barricaded Cuba, he said the Navy submarines picked up ruins on the floor of the Atlantic. And he said they found the ruins of Atlantis. And he said they pulled up the technology from the ruins. And he said then the Navy went all around the planet looking for other ruined technology on the base of the ocean floor. But he said they found a treasure trove of Atlantean technology that the Navy's been using. I hope that answered your question. Yes? I believe NASA is presenting a public side of space exploration, but what you're seeing is the hidden side of space exploration, okay? Yes. Yes, that is true. It's like a form of chemtrails, but a lot of that is being neutralized. If you go on YouTube, you'll see images of chemtrails, and you'll see blow-ups of saucers going into the chemtrails and using lasers to neutralize the chemtrails. So there's activity that's going on to neutralize a lot of the negative aspects. Well, I'll tell you this, there's a lot of people who left this planet who are living off planet. Bill told me that when he worked for TRW, they had developed a pill to reverse aging. It's a nutrient. For men, if you're above the age of 35, it reduces your age to between 32 to 34 years of age. For women, it's between 23 to 25 years of age. But it's neutralized if you use alcohol, drugs, or tobacco, okay? He told me that 3 members of Solar Warden that he knew throughout his life would come back to Earth every 20 years. They would visit him in California. He lived in San Diego. They would visit him every 20 years. They would come down here like coming to, visit a resort. And he'd always ask them, do you want to come back here and stay? And they said, no, we prefer living amongst the stars. But he had 3 friends who would visit him every 20 years. They never aged. They're parts of Solar Warden. Up until the time he passed, he was working on designs for the Navy, and the Navy regarded him so highly, he never really retired. He continued to work up until the time he passed. It's absolutely astounding. I shared with Bill an experience I had at San Jacinto in California, and he still had the ability of being able to tune in, and he was telling me what I was about to tell him of my experience. And I said, Bill, you never lost the gift. When he was telling me what I was about to tell him, it's like he was walking along with me during the experience and recording everything that I was saying to him or that I was about to say. I said, Bill, you never lost the gift for being able to tune in. I asked him, he said his mother did not look like any of her sisters. And he said, she looks so different. And I said, Bill, I think your mother was a Nordic. He said, yes, my mother was a Nordic. He was one of 500 here. 500 Nordic women brought children forth to be parts of different aspect of elevating awareness and consciousness behind the scenes. He was given a green light to go ahead and reveal his information, and he would say that the Navy threw holy water on him talking about this. Somebody else? Yes, Joe.
The Bill Tompkins or Bob Wood, did they ever talk about work that they had crossed over with the Naval Research Lab, the Air Force Research Lab?
He said that the Air Force had their own programs, but he said the most advanced technology and the most advanced breakthroughs were occurring within the Navy. And the Navy were keeping it that way purposely, for whatever reason. Yes?
Do you think that, as you see President Trump Kennedy announced the Space Force, that they are going to start finally releasing information soon to let us or let people know? And if not, why not? What is the problem? If we have a working relationship with these people, why are they still suppressing all the information?
I think it's getting closer to the point, the tipping point. And I've spoken to a couple of physicists who are part of this inner circle, this nucleus, and they said that they're being pushed very hard for releasing this information. And I said, who's behind releasing it? Who do you think they said? The visitors are behind pushing this. They want the information to come out.
That was my other question, because in the newer generations of young people are these Navy children, and I'm mainly because we've had enormous growth in intelligence in very young children in the last 30 years.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. The Navy personnel that are at Medford, Oregon, they're specifically there to have their children be trained by these space visitors to be part of Solar Warden. It's all going to be made known. It's all going to be... Bill would say, Frank, we've been lied to for so long. It's time for the lies to stop, for all this to come out. That's why he was so excited when he saw that Rockwell integrated space chart that Colonel Ware sent to me. He said, boy, he said, if they're releasing this now, he said, we got to be very close to disclosure. Because it's extraordinary. Again, if you want a copy of it so that you could examine it yourself, it's absolutely astounding. I'll give you my email address, and I'll be happy to email it to you. You can take a look at it. It's my name, Frank Chille, Chille, @hotmail.com. I'll be happy to send it to you. It's really remarkable. If there's any further questions, I'd like to go into another presentation. Yes, go ahead.
Just curious, the port in Northern Virginia, is that the Mount Weather?
I don't know. I don't know if it is Mount. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. I wouldn't be surprised. Yes?
Did the basis of all the technology come from the Roswell crash?
A lot of it has. A lot of it has. As Joe was talking last night about Bell Labs, that supposedly was one of the seeding points for lasers, fiber optics, transistors, cell phones, all kinds of incredible things. That's a 2 million square foot facility where they had 6,000 engineers and employees there. And I think Joe said that there's, what is there? There's 6 wet labs there, 6 underground wet labs? 7 under wet labs where they could test products underwater. I mean, it's really remarkable. Hopefully we'll get more information about that as well. Yes? Say that again? Are they what kind of children? I don't know if they are or not. I don't know. All I know is that they're very, very intelligent, and that they're going into Solar Warden at a very young age. There's like late teens to be of service off planet. Yes?
Throughout the years, William Thompson designed like the ships. Did he ever board one?
Yes. Yeah, he has. He told me he had the ability to bilocate at the age of 2. He thought everybody had that ability to be able to bilocate, be here in the physical body and be somewhere else. I said, Bill, not all of us have that ability. Any other questions before we go on? Yes, sir.
You said like, you have meetings at the Cinnamon Library?
Yes, we have monthly meetings at the Cinnamon Library. Matter of fact, our next meeting is October 30th, this coming Tuesday, and Joe's going to be our featured speaker. He's going to be doing exclusively about Bell Labs. And that's going to be at 6:30 at the Cinnamon Public Library off Route 130. All you folks are welcome to attend. we want to go on to the next PowerPoint presentation. You can advance that. Can you advance that to the next PowerPoint presentation? I think it's set up here. Let's see. I think this is it. Okay, you folks are in for a treat now. Okay, again, what do you know? This is going to be another aspect of sharing an experience with you folks I think you'll find quite astounding. There's a place in Southern California, in Yucca Valley, which is the high desert area above Palm Springs. It's called Christ Desert Park. There was an aircraft designer and engineer who lived there, who lived in Long Beach by the name of Frank Anton Martin. And he would create these plaster of Paris sculptures of figures from the New Testament, of the Master Jesus. And he would take them out. He bought this piece of property in Yucca Valley, and he called it Christ Desert Park. So he would make these figures, and he would take them out to the property and mount them out there, okay? This is the entrance to Christ Desert Park, and it's against a hill of mountains that separates Yucca Valley from Landers and other parts of the high desert area. It's really, really quite extraordinary. When he passed, he willed this to the state of California, and whenever I would go out there with my brother Simon and others, we would go out to the desert quite often and visit with Gabriel Green. I don't know if that name means anything to you. He was in the service. He was a photographer in the service, and he was also the photographer who photographed all the Giant Rock UFO conventions. He was a contemporary of George Hunt Williamson, a contemporary of George Van Tassel, of Daniel Fry, of George Adamski, and we would go out and meet with Gabe, and Gabe would introduce us to some of these individuals. We would go out and spend time at the Integratron, my brother and I, and we would always go to Christ Desert Park. It was always a special place to go. These are some of the scenes from inside of Christ Desert Park. And again, Frank Anton Martin created all these and made it available to the public. It's all free of charge. Sermon on the Mount. And there's so much detail in all these figures. It's really remarkable. Well, I got a call from Gabriel Green. He said, Frank, you and Simon and Bill Hamilton and about 4 or 5 other people, he said, you got to come out to Yucca Valley. He said, this Sunday something very important is going to be occurring. And I said, what's going to occur? He said, High Desert Savings and Loan is going to be opening on Sunday. There's a woman who had an experience, and the bank is going to let her present the experience, and they told us to get the word out. So there was about 75 of us that went to this event, and we met this woman. Her name is Barbara Beaver. She lived in the Sunwest Apartments, okay? This is Christ Desert Park. This is a parking lot there. The apartments are here. She was in her bedroom. She was on her bed meditating, and she was facing the window. And her window faces the group of hills above Christ Desert Park. And she was wearing a sweatsuit, and as she was in meditation, she opened her eyes, and she saw this blue light bouncing up and down the hill ridge, the ridge of hills above Christ Desert Park. And she was watching, and all of a sudden it stopped, and a cone of blue light came out of this blue sphere, and encased her in this blue cone of light. And she heard this voice say, "Barbara, come to Christ Desert Park." So she got out of her. She didn't feel like it was pushing on her. It was making a demand on her. She was barefoot. She walked out of her apartment. She walked down the dirt road leading to Christ Desert Park to the entrance, okay? All the time she's looking up at the sky, and she sees this blue light above the ridge of hills, okay? Here's Christ Desert Park parking lot, okay? It's a huge parking lot. You're going to see something that is really extraordinary. I met the son of Barbara Beaver. He provided me with her original drawings and paintings. She was a seamstress, and she created these artist renditions of what her experience was, and her son gave them to me, and he said, "Frank, use them in a presentation about my mom." So you're seeing things that have never been shown to the public before. The first time I saw these was more than 35 years ago. This is her rendition of what the craft looked like, okay? She heard a voice say, "Barbara, stand perfectly still," and she heard a whoosh sound, and the craft landed in the parking lot of Christ Desert Park, okay? She said it was about 100 feet in diameter. She said it was like a bluish purple color, and she said it had like a gold rim around the side of it. And she said it opened up, and she got the impression to come inside of the craft. So she went inside of the craft, and it closed behind her, and she got this impression that before she could be allowed into the center part of the craft, there may be contamination on her clothes. And she was told she'd have to remove her sweatsuit. And all of a sudden she started to panic because she was not wearing anything under her sweatsuit. So when she had that thought, all of a sudden she got this wave of love that enveloped her and told her basically not to worry, that she'd be all right. So she took off her sweatsuit, and she said one of the panels in the floor opened up, and a cylinder came up, and she said a lid opened up, and it was like a hamper, and she put her clothing into it. She said it closed and receded into the floor, and then she said one of the wall panels opened up, and she said she saw a garment on what looked to be a hanger. And she's a seamstress, so she knows cloth. She said this was the finest cloth she had ever seen. She said it was like silk, but not like silk. And she said she put it on, and it formed perfectly to her body. She said that where the openings were for her wrists and for her ankles, all she had to do was run her hand over it, and the seam would close. And she was like playing with it, with the seam opening and closing. She said she did that for a couple of minutes, and then she said the center part of the craft opened up. And she said there were 4 beings there. She said there was a man and a woman. You're seeing the image that she had shown us at High Desert Savings and Loan. She said they looked like a Greek god, Greek goddesses. She said they were the most perfect looking man and woman you could ever imagine. She said their eyes were like gold and bronze color. This was the female. And again, these are Barbara's renditions, okay? I was blown away when her son shared them with me because I had not seen them since the day she had originally shown it to us at this event. So there was a man and a woman. Then there was a smaller being. She said he had the most loving eyes, and this is again one of her renditions. And then she said there was a taller being, and I don't have the color portrait of the taller being. She said he looked like an ancient Egyptian. She said he was about 7 feet tall, and she said he had the most dark purple skin and the most incredible purple eyes. And she's in the middle of this craft, and these beings are there, and she's saying to herself, why am I here? I'm a seamstress. She says, I sew clothing. She says, I don't have an educational background. She said, I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about this. And she said, they came over to her and they gave her what we would call today a CD, okay? She said they gave her a silver disc, and she said she held it in her hands, and she said it showed her life unraveling like a movie. It was like a holographic depiction of her life, and she started to cry. And the beings came around to her, and they put their hands on her shoulder. And the reason she was crying is when she was a young girl, she used to look up in the night sky and said, if there's people who live out there, I'd like to meet them someday. And she was experiencing the realization of that dream, and that's why she was crying. And they said to her, Barbara, we want to propose a program to see if you would want to work with us. There's life on every one of the planets in the solar system. We'd like you to work with us to set up an ambassador program where people from other planets could come here and visit with Earth families, and Earth families could go and visit with these beings that live on other planets. And we'd like you to bring this information to the public. And she also had a series of paintings of each of the planets she was taken to. She did portraits of each one of them. The sun doesn't have those, unfortunately. I wish I had them. They were incredible depictions. So she showed each one of these to us, and there was about 75 of us at the bank on this Sunday. And I said to Barbara, Barbara, is the success of this program predicated upon our receptivity to this? And she lowered her eyes, she looked at the floor, and then she looked at me and she said, yes. She said, we're all being monitored. She said, we're all on the big screen right now, and they're evaluating whether or not we're open and receptive to this by how open and receptive you folks are to hearing this. And we were all overjoyed to hear this. And She concluded her talk. She had never spoken publicly before in her life, but she did a beautiful job. She really, really did a beautiful job. So we were congratulating her. We were saying, Barbara, this is really wonderful. This is something that the planet really needs. So we parted company, and about 2 weeks later, Simon and I went out to Yucca Valley again to visit Gabriel Green. So we would always stop at the local supermarket to pick up goods, food to bring over to Gabe's house. So we happened to see Barbara at the supermarket. We said, Barbara, how you doing? It's good to see you. And she wouldn't say boo to us. She wouldn't say hello or nothing. She went right into the supermarket. So we picked up the goods that we wanted to get. We went over to Gabe's house, and we said, Gabe, we just saw Barbara, and there's something wrong. She wouldn't address us. She wouldn't talk to us. He said to me, Frank, something's going on. And I said, what's happening? He said, people are knocking her door all hours of the night. People are calling her. They're calling her the Antichrist, that she's going to sell mankind down the river. And they said, she's under such duress. Well, to make a long story short, she stopped sharing information. She did not come forward with any more information. She was intimidated by these people banging at her door all hours of the night, by the phone calls of intimidation and calling her, working for, evil purposes. She wasn't working for evil purposes whatsoever. She wanted to share this information with the world. And this is a world event. What we're going through is a world event, and it's going to be occurring. It didn't occur at Barbara's time. And I want to show you again, this is another rendition that she did to the craft, okay? This is a letter that Wendell Stevens sent to Barbara Beaver after Bill Hamilton and his wife went to visit her. Bill Hamilton told Wendell Stevens how important Barbara's story was, that it should be put in print. And he's offering Barbara with this letter an opportunity to present her story, to advance funds to her, to put out 5,000 books as initial printing about her experiences, okay? I had never seen this before. The Sun shared this with me, okay? So Wendell Stevens was aware of this. This story never really went anywhere, okay? So her book was never published. The Sun told me that she wrote a manuscript that was never completed. This is another star visitor that Barbara had done a portrait of that the Sun sent me. This is another one. It's an Egyptian Atlantean being that she had met. And I'm really happy that Michael, her son, shared all this with me. This is a photograph of Barbara taken in 1982. He said, Frank, my mom wound up spending the rest of her life in that apartment in Yucca Valley. She only came out at nighttime to do grocery shopping. She lived like a hermit the rest of her life. She was so beaten down by the powers that be to prevent her from talking, okay? I want to share something with you too. Barbara's experience was a cosmic experience. The visitor said that their forefathers are our forefathers. It's time for our families to meet. They're looking forward to our families to meet, to be able to interact. That is going to be occurring. It's like holding back the dawn. They're not going to hold back the dawn. Again, this is the image of Barbara's ship that she saw at Christ Desert Park. When I saw this image again, it reminded me of a series of photographs that had been given to me and shared with me by Commander Graham Bethune, an individual that George Filer knows. We knew him well. He had flagship status. He was a commander in the Navy. He flew George Marshall to 2 crash retrievals, one in Iceland and one in Utah. And he showed me a photograph of the crash retrieval in Utah. It was a 100-foot diameter disc. He also shared it with Linda Moulton Howe, and the Navy had recovered it. And he had all kinds of incredible experiences. He knew all the Mercury 7 astronauts. This is Commander Graham Bethune. He had his own experience flying from Iceland to the East Coast in 1952, where a 300-foot craft showed up in front of his cockpit, and he had an experience, and everybody on board the plane also had an experience with the craft. And it was written up. It was one of the first Blue Book write-ups. These are photographs that Graham shared with George Filer and myself. They were taken by an associate of his who went down to Nashville. These were taken outside of Nashville, Tennessee, about 35 miles outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in 1989. Look at the similarity between this craft and the one that Barbara had her experience with. These are incredible nighttime photographs. If you look closely at the photographs, you'll notice that there's light beams coming down from the ship, and they're coming down at different lengths. We don't have the capability here to submit light at different lengths here. They do, we don't. Look at the length of light, the beams of light. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? I want to thank you for your attention today. Thank you for the opportunity for permitting me to share some experiences that I've had. And all I could ask you is to keep an open mind, and perhaps with expansion you'll be able to bridge from one concept to another and find a more equitable place for some of this revolutionary information. But I'm telling you, a lot of things are going on behind the scenes, and a lot of people are doing incredible work very quietly.